If that's what so man's thesis, which is really important, okay, was this two-coast thesis. Well, I mean, his original thesis was you need to have naval power, but the corollary is the two-coast thesis in reference to America, okay, what we need. And this idea caught fire at Congress. And by 1890, because he's been peddling this idea even before his book comes out, by 1890, we go on a naval building spree. And, during the Civil War, our Navy was kind of meh. It was okay, but not anything to write home about. In 1890, we become the world's 5th largest Navy. Within a decade, we're the world's 3rd largest Navy. So we went on a spree. Spree! Okay, built lots of ships. Okay, so very good.
Title of the book?
The Influence of Sea Power Upon History. Okay. So again, for military history, Alfred Thayer Mann, really important. Mann, it's M-A-H-A-N, but it's pronounced Mann, like M-A-N. Anyway. So anyway, there it is. So that's him. Now, so we've been emphasizing the Navy. Okay, this is a big deal because again, when you think about later, as we talk about World War I, World War II, which branch is going to be first involved in a lot of these? It's the Navy. Okay, why? Because it was the one that was well funded, that was really built up at this point. And it's going to be the Navy that we send to intervene in various problems. In 1895, our first intervention is necessary. Surprisingly, in a place called Venezuela. And I know when we think of Latin America, Venezuela is not always on our top list of places, okay? In part because, and now Venezuela is kind of different because at this time it doesn't have the oil wealth. Today it's very wealthy due to oil. Venezuela is actually part of OPEC. I don't know if y'all knew that or not. Its leader's Hugo Chavez. He doesn't really like America very much. He said President Bush was the devil. He likes Obama a little bit more than Chavez. I think he's only a minor demon instead of the full devil. But he doesn't like it either very much. And so as a result, but in these days, Venezuela was not very strong. Now, I know you all are really strong on geography because I know that's your big to-do, right? But here I'm going to draw my one of my fingers. So here's the northern and southern coast. So up here is, that would be Panama, but it's not Panama yet. All this is part of Colombia. Okay, so that's Colombia. Then there's Venezuela. Actually, and then we had Guyana, and here's British Guyana. Venezuela. And then you have French and Dutch Guyana as well, but we don't need to worry about those. Anyway, the Brits had this little property there, and they're beginning to feel a little cramped in British Guyana, so they said, you know what? We think that our border should be moved a little west, that Venezuela's hogging the territory. It's kind of like somebody's hogging the covers on the bed. And indeed, of course, what they were saying was they wanted to invade Venezuela and take eastern Venezuela for themselves and make it part of British Guyana. Now, of course, if they were to do that, what would that be?
An act of war.
Okay, well, an act of war against them, yeah, but what would we in America say? It's a violation of what?
The Monroe Doctrine.
The Monroe Doctrine, right? Okay, and in fact, we say it in England. Don't do this. It's a violation of the Monroe Doctrine. And the English are like, oh, right. Oh, violation of the Monroe Doctrine. Right, like, one imperial power is going to tell another not to take something. That's so quick, a tea, they were not impressed. And so they chuckled down there with their boats, doing very English boat things, so very, tea, crumpets, and all that. And lo and behold, we actually send the American fleet down there. And they're like, crikey! Sorry, that would have been Australian. Work with it, it's like, oh yeah! Okay, what? And so, yes. I know, but still, British Brits would not do so because the Australians are kind of like ugly third cousins, by comparison. So, they're like, and so they were not happy with it. But we chased them off, and so this was our first really aggressive advance in reference to the Monroe Doctrine, and we were quite serious about it. And within a couple of years, we're going to get even more serious when it involves another country, Cuba. But in order to understand the story of Cuba, once again, all these stories have precursor stories, and so we have to go back 15 years and, strangely enough, tell another story. If you remember, back when I was talking about expansion in the West and buying all these territories, I mentioned the acquisition of the Midway Islands, right? The acquisition. And the Midway Islands are near another set of islands that we like to talk about and think about as Americans. What islands are those that were at this point an independent country? Hawaii, right? Hawaii, which had its own king. And the Hawaiian Islands, which was all cool and dandy, and we were all excited about those. They had this major product that they made, and a really cool food stuff of Hawaii that we love. What's that called? Yeah, okay, pineapples is the first thing you think of, but well, it was sugar cane. Now, sugar cane wasn't native to Hawaii, but had actually been imported there by the British during the explorations of English explorers, such as, but not actually truly the first one, which was James Cook, who we often talk about as Captain James Cook, though he wasn't a captain when he first went to Hawaii, but that's one of those long correctives that I'm not going to get into it here. But anyway, so sugarcane had become the main, and sugar politics was the politics of Hawaii. Who had control of the sugar plantations was who had control of Hawaii. And Hawaii made lots of good sugar. And let's face it, we in America, we loves us some sugar, right? I know. Okay, and so we loves us that sugar. And in 1875, we cut a deal with Hawaii. We say, we'll tell you what, we will let you import sugar into the United States as if you are a state itself. You don't have to pay any import taxes. Not foreshadowing anything that will happen in the future, of course. But nonetheless, you know that you may import this. Interestingly enough, because of that, Hawaii eventually gives us this nice little small concession. Nothing huge, but I guess I ought to mention it in case it comes up later. But within a decade, as a result of us being kind of nice to them, they say, oh, that's kind of cool. I'll tell you what, we'll let you build this little military thing over here on Oahu. And it's no big deal, but I guess I should mention the name of it. It's this place called Pearl Harbor. Yeah, okay. So in case it comes up later, we'll mention it now. Pearl Harbor, because of the sugar, you know. So anyway, so the whole sugar politics was all good. But as we said, Republican policy had also been to have high import tariffs, right? High protective tariffs. And we're getting our sugar now from Hawaii since 1875. What does that mean for other economies that are trying to import sugar into the United States? Okay, things are going downhill for them strongly. And one of those that was used to sending us lots and lots of sugar was close. Cuba. Cuba was hugely sugar rich. I know again with Cuba we tend to think of the cigars, but it was a sugar value that really made Cuba so valuable. It also did help. It was one of Spain's last possessions in the Western Hemisphere, right? It was one of the last ones that it really wanted and was keeping a hold on to. To give you an idea of how valuable that Cuba was, during President Polk's administration in the 1840s, we offered to buy Cuba from Spain, which, boy, I keep on thinking, wouldn't have that been just at a crazy difference in history if we had bought Cuba in the 1840s? Okay, now think about what we've been paying for territory, okay? Florida we bought for $5 million. Louisiana purchased 15. Texas free, okay? The Mexican cession, after we beat the shit out of Mexico, we get the eBay blue light special price of $13.25 million, plus we forgive about $2.25 million of their debt, so it's about $15-16 million, depending on the count. What did we say we bought Alaska for? We did.
We didn't say how much we were.
I did many lectures ago. During that Western expansion thing, Seward's Folly, $7.5 million, as you remember. But yeah, so well, 7 and change. It was about 7.5. So that gives you an idea of what we're willing to spend for territory, right? Okay. So think about Cuba, the size of Cuba. How much do you expect that we would pay for that in the 1840s?
$1.5 million.
You think $1 million, $1.5 million, something like that? Okay. We offered, do the Dr. Evil here, $1